Welcome to Vote 2017. I'm Teresa Whipple, and today we are here with Ian Cotton, who is running for re-election to Lynnwood City Council Position 2. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for having me.
Yeah. We're going to start by talking about your background and why you are running for re-election.
Absolutely. Well, when we sat down in 2013, my original impetus to run for local government was my wife and I had just bought our first house in Lynnwood. Though I'm a born and raised Lynnwoodian or Lynnwoodite. The vote's still out on that.
But, yeah, I was just going to say that. What do we call those people?
Yeah. But that was the original, thing that kind of pushed me forward was, okay, it's made a significant investment, what's going on at the city level. And so I started going, that's what I originally got me interested in local government. Since then, I've really enjoyed and developed a real passion for the way that local government works. As an engineer, I have a propensity to want to see how things work, take them apart, try and improve them, make them better. And what I found is that government's not really any different than that. So I've really enjoyed that.
Okay. And do you have something in particular that you see as a next project you want to work on in your next term?
Yes. Money and the budget are a huge issue right now at the city. There's a lot of things changing. There's a lot of services that are being regionalized. There's a lot of efficiencies that may or may not happen. And there's kind of been a bill of goods promised. And that bill of goods, though, is going to be delivered over the series of the next 2 or 3 years. And being in the seat when the bill of goods were originally sold to us, I think it's very important to have that consistency because I've been so intimately involved with the SNOCOM-SNOPAC merger, which may or may not happen, the recent RFA measure that did pass, so that is happening. All of these things are happening, and all of them have come with the proposed savings or cost deferment dollars to the taxpayers. And a lot of those things happened in meetings that I sat in. And so the value I'm going to bring to the Lynnwood voters this round is by retaining me in the seats that I've sat in for the past 3.5 years, I'll be able to hold people's feet to the fire and say, wait, hold on. When we talked about this in 2015 and 16 and 17, we said we were going to do this. Now you're telling me this? No. We need to go back to what you said we were going to do and what we said essentially we were going to deliver. And so making sure that taxpayers see the return on their investment that they were promised is really a key issue for this election, I think.
Okay. And what we talked a little bit about this earlier, but and you said you had gone back and reviewed your earlier interview, which is impressive. What about the business environment in Lynnwood as it stands today? We talked about this 4 years ago.
Yes.
Kind of the feedback I was getting from people is that it was not terribly business friendly, and that people were frustrated with getting permits and other things. And how are you feeling about it today, 4 years later?
I'm feeling a lot better about it because I've taken a deeper dive into that issue, and I've talked to both the development community and the business community, and we've talked at the city level about how we go about interfacing with business and local business, whether they're a mom, pause, single operator, or whether they have a dozen employees, or whether they're a larger operator. We've reviewed those, how we process those things. I'll say from the business standpoint, we've made some significant improvements in how business licensing occurs. For some reason, we just always have done it that way, kind of. Understanding was we just always processed everyone's business licenses at the beginning of every year.
Yeah.
And we realized that didn't make any sense. So we changed it over actually to a rolling calendar, I think back in 2015 and 16, and we told people, if you came in early and got your business license renewed early, we would prorate. And what that did is it took a burden off the city, and it made us more responsive to the business community. The other thing we've done is we've tried to bolster our plan review department so that people are actually getting plans out of plan review so that they can get, shovels in the ground, men on the site, men and women building these things. We're not there yet, especially with the recent boom and the Seattle market being just overbuilt or underbuilt and in high demand is pushing that north to us. And so we're seeing, just last year, Lynnwood had its first 2 tower cranes in quite some time, all in the city center area. So that was really exciting. But that level of development is coming to Lynnwood, and it's here. And so we're struggling a little bit, but we are aware of the issue. So.
Okay. And, talking about the cranes in Lynnwood, which I think kind of took a lot of us by surprise.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
2 of them.
2 of them.
Yeah.
But, of course, some of that additional development is kind of been planned around Sound Transit and the fact that they're bringing light rail to town.
Yes.
Of course, 6 months later now than they were before because there's been some delays. But what do you see in terms of, given that there were some delays, some cost overruns, and the city has been working with Sound Transit on developing those plans, but yet cities, and not just Lynnwood, but others along the rail line have been making plans, have been selling or buying up business properties have been bought up by Sound Transit, and now there's a little bit of a delay. I know in Lynnwood in particular, there's been some businesses like Black Angus and others that have closed.
Yes.
But maybe that's not, they're going to remain that way for a while. So my point is there's a lot of change, but some uncertainty about light rail. And so how do you see the city working with Sound Transit on that?
Well, absolutely. We've been actually very intimately involved on the department level. At an elected level, we, have kind of been hands off and let the workers do the work. I am a little, I was a little frustrated when the cost overrun conversation happened that I felt Lynnwood got thrown under the bus a little bit because when Sound Transit originally pitched the Lynnwood station, what they showed us was a very nice station, and we kind of said, you still have to provide that. We don't want a concrete box sitting on into, until I'm old and gray, a gray box. It's got to be something. I mean, this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we kind of have to seize on that. So most of the cost overruns are happening further up the line, and it's, I think Lynnwood was, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 was what the asks for, not just getting a concrete block, which is not acceptable to the community. I mean, Lynnwood really has positioned itself to be a regional model in that, and we've done some zoning changes to increase some of the zoning immediately adjacent to the Sound Transit station in the future. Recently, the Cambridge apartment complex got purchased by Grosvenor, which is a really large global development group. And so that was very exciting because, when people of that caliber show up to your city and go, we're buying property, you go, okay, this is really going to happen. And so making sure that we're zoning those things appropriately, and which we have, I feel, the development's going to happen in the next 4 years. And it's going to be boom season, as long as we don't hit on this another economic cycle of some kind, which is also a concern. But yeah. Okay.
And related to kind of some of the changes in that downtown area, and something again we talked about 4 years ago was. Lynnwood has always, as long as I've been around, struggled with a little bit of an identity crisis in terms of when people think of Lynnwood, they think of Alderwood Mall, and they don't necessarily think of where the city center is. Do you see that maybe changing with light rail? Do you see the city having some opportunities to kind of develop some of that identity with some of the growth?
Absolutely. And I kind of want to dispel this idea that, because I think over the last 4 years we have developed that sense of identity. There was a real effort prior to me coming on the council, but has really been continued forward, which is, Lynnwood is a great place to live, work, and play. So that branding has really been consistent across platforms, which I think has been really powerful. And there. So, in private industry, I work as a consultant, and so I work with the development community, and so I sit on the other side of the table sometimes, and so I understand that in government, really all you can do is set the table. All you can do is zone it, but, the city of Lynnwood, we don't have the dollars to develop city center. That's the developer's job, but we can zone it appropriately, and that's what we've done. We've also been working on bolstering our economic development infrastructure fund so that when large projects do start happening in that downtown area, the city has some finances set aside to do things like a city center park or set aside green space so that there can be that signature placeholder of a civic center there that's an open green space, open to everybody. So I think we've done a really fantastic job. The recent park update that's gone out too has really detailed a lot of that. And so from a policy standpoint and from a planning and strategic planning standpoint, we've done a really good job of setting the table and saying, okay, this is Lynnwood's identity. This is our sense of place. We're ready for the downtown to be built. So let's build it. So.
Good enough. And let's talk a little bit about another issue that I think we revisited 4 years ago, the issue of how diverse Lynnwood is and how many different cultures are represented, how many different languages are spoken, and how sometimes that presents both an opportunity and a challenge in terms of communication with those folks and engaging them in government. How do you think Lynnwood is doing in that way?
I think we've done a really fantastic job in that regard. We have fallen down a little bit. There was, with the dissolution of the Neighborhoods Demographic and Diversity Commission, that was a bit of a contentious issue. And, I wasn't very satisfied with how that went down. I thought it was kind of handled, I think, a little poorly. However, I will say that we really have just a rock star in the person of Tom Davis, our police chief. Just he's really brought a change of culture and really empowered a culture that was already there. Our Lynnwood police forces, we recently had a efficiency study done on our police force, and we found that, to their credit, the Lynnwood Police Department has 3 times the amount of training that the national average does. And what that allows them to do is it allows them to have the confidence to de-escalate and to be guardians and not warriors. And so keeping that culture and nurturing that culture legislatively is a big priority of mine, because what Tom Davis, the new police chief, has done is empowered his frontline people to say, we're not warriors, we're guardians. And I think when you change the atmosphere of your police culture, you really do a lot for your community, and I think that that's been done. So that's one area that I think we've really done a fantastic job in addressing that. I think we still have a lot more to go with some of the fairs and events that we could be doing to celebrate all of those different things, but we are doing a lot of those things. We had the Afro-Latino, Ubuntu, and several other large festivals this summer, and it all usually kicks off in the beginning of the year with the Martin Luther King celebration, Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration that the city is kind of made one of our mainstay celebrations, and so I think we're doing a good job, but we can always do better. I think that's kind of, I used to do continuous improvement in the manufacturing world, and so it's kind of ingrained in me that we're doing good, but we can always be better. And so that's, I think, what we're doing at the city at some levels, and I think that's good. But I think there's some areas that we still have a lot of work to do.
Okay. Changing gears just a little bit, you, of course, have a family and looking for ways to engage your kids and all of that. How do you think that Lynnwood rates in terms of a place that's family-friendly?
I think we do a fantastic job. My daughter has over the last 2 years become an absolute terror on wheels. She is just a bike master now. And so one of the things I think the city has done really well is continued forward investment on things like parks and bike lanes and sidewalks. We can't afford to do it all, but we leverage a lot of things like grants from Verdant with our Bike to Health program, and getting regionally connected. And that's where I think Lynnwood has really done a good job as being a regional model, is we've recognized that we're a hub for the region. And so we need to make sure that we are talking to our partners that we connect with. And so things like the Bike to Health program, and developing some of those bike lanes and some of those dedicated spaces, so that as my daughter and as young families, they want to be mobile, they want to be healthy, they want to be active, and getting out on a bike is a great way to do that for families. And and our parks department and our rec center are just top notch. So we live very close to several of the city's fantastic parks, and so I think we're doing a really good job.
Okay. Let's talk about the issue of homelessness, which is something that a lot of cities, every city in the area, is facing right now. What kinds of things do you think that Lynnwood could do to address that problem, knowing that there's no one magic solution?
Absolutely. So just to be clear on that issue, I was part of the homelessness task force in 2014 and 15, where we really started to address that issue. One of the things that we need to be careful of is that we are providing the appropriate level of enforcement and also care. We can't have people aggressively panhandling people in shopping parking lots. My mom's retiring in this community. She's not a big woman, and so the idea of somebody aggressively panhandling my mom is forefront of my mind. At the same time, I have friends, that I went to high school with, good people that I grew up with, that have succumbed to this heroin epidemic that has swept the region. And so no one's left untouched by that. And so we have to address that. One of the things we have done is we've shifted some resources around. By recently, we moved some of the drug and task force and crime unit resources in the police department. We moved them over into a community policing model where we can have embedded social workers in the police department, so that we're saying to the criminal or the person with criminal intent, you're not welcome, but we're saying to the person that's in need, let's have a conversation. Let's connect you with what services are available. Let's start to talk about what can be done. And I think the issue with homelessness is talking about shifting resources. Very quickly, if you start looking at, so a homeless person has an emergency and 911 gets called. Squad car or two show up. Basic life support fire apparatus shows up, followed up by an advanced life support apparatus, and they get transported to the ER. By the time you really start accounting for that one phone call and that one touch to that individual, you could have paid for their rent for a year. So you start having those kind of conversations around the table, and you start saying, okay, what's the true cost of homelessness? What's the true cost of rendering services to them now? Because we are, and so one of the things that we've done is we've gone for grants with Verdant and partnered with Verdant Health, which is an excellent partner for the region. Their new offices in Lynnwood, but the community paramedic program that Verdant funds, and some of those other aspects are just ways that we're trying to slowly shift from responding to emergencies with regard to the homeless population to proactively engaging them and coming up with solutions that fit for where they're at now, to try and move them along the track to being to getting back housed, clothed, fed, working a job, and contributing to society. So.
Okay. We have now come to the portion of the program where you get to address the voters directly and tell them why they should vote for you. So I invite you to do that now.
Very good. Thank you very much. So I'm Ian Cotton. I'm running for re-election to Lynnwood City Council Position number 2. You can find me on Facebook at Cotton for Council with the number 4. You can also visit my website, www.cottonforcouncil.com. Both of those are the number 4. Real issues facing the city are budgetary. And so sitting in the seat that I've sat on the Finance Committee, on the RFA Planning Committee, and on some of these other boards with the Snowpack Board, these are all services and systems that undergird the overall cost of government in the city. And so being the person at the table to say, when we talked about the RFA, we said we were going to give back X number of dollars to the taxpayers. And now you're telling me that number is getting smaller? That's not acceptable. Go back and check your books. When we're spending money out of our reserve fund to fund ongoing expenses, these kind of things need attention, and they need somebody to sit in a seat and say sometimes no, sometimes yes. And I think I'm that person, and I ask for your vote this November.
Ian Cotton, thank you very much for coming in, and I wish you the best of luck in November.
Thank you, Teresa.